Today we begin with a debate over just how much we're entitled to see of what goes on in America's federal courtrooms, and should we get to see it firsthand or even live. It's neither an easy nor a settled question nearly a century after cameras entered their first courtroom. Some argue they provide accountability and transparency of the judiciary branch. Others see only a circus.
Derek Chauvin has been charged with murder and with manslaughter.
The trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin, convicted of murdering black suspect George Floyd, was marketed like a Hollywood drama.
Court TV cameras will be inside that courtroom.
And our teams will be live for every moment.
Viewers may not have known it, but it was the first full trial in Minnesota where TV cameras were allowed.
Good morning, Your Honor.
When it comes to courtroom drama, it's hard to think of a more made-for-TV trial than that of former NFL star O.J. Simpson in California. A pair of blood-stained gloves appeared too small for Simpson, proving his attorney argued that Simpson wasn't the one who wore them and killed his ex-wife.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury?
Simpson walked away with a not guilty verdict.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
For all the interest the Simpson trial generated, it revealed both the promise and the perils of cameras in court. It allowed the public to see just how the jury arrived at its verdict. But critics said the judge, attorneys, and witnesses were made into celebrities, sometimes playing to the media more than the jury. More than 25 years later, that sums up the current debate over whether cameras in state and local courtrooms should be expanded to the federal halls of justice where they're currently banned. Chuck Grassley is among a bipartisan group of senators supporting two bills that would permit cameras for the first time in all federal courts and the U.S. Supreme Court. What do you think are the chances that either one of these bills gets approved?
It's going to be easier to get cameras in the courtroom for the district and circuit courts than a bill for the Supreme Court. And some justices have said it would be over my dead body that we'll have cameras in the Supreme Court.
That comment came from Justice David Souter in 1996.
Wrong that I can tell you that the day you see a camera coming into our courtroom, it's going to go rolled over my dead body.
The debate over cameras in the courtroom began before World War II.
The trial was beginning. The charge, not kidnapping, but willful murder in the first degree.
The first big trial seen by a wide audience was in 1935. Bruno Hauptmann kidnapped and murdered the child of aviator Charles Lindbergh. Video was shown in movie theaters.
Defense counsel Riley, playing to the jury, asked Lindbergh questions implicating the servants in their home. Betty Gow, the child's nurse, was first praised for her looks, next rumored to be part of the kidnapped gang.
The circus-like atmosphere prompted most states to restrict the broadcasting of court proceedings. The press has been pushing back ever since. Have you heard any concern that with cameras present, it could change the whole dynamic of how the attorneys perform and how witnesses act and how the judges determine things?
Yeah, you hear it all the time, but it hasn't affected state jurisdiction and the state judiciaries where they allow cameras in the courtroom.
That's been heavily debated. In 1965, a Texas judge allowed cameras in the sensational trial of Billy Saul Estes. He was a politically connected swindler linked to conspiracies involving President Johnson, the Kennedy assassination, and other suspicious deaths. The Supreme Court later overturned some of his convictions on the grounds that cameras deprived him of a fair trial. In 1966, the Supreme Court also found cameras and excessive publicity interfered with the Ohio trial of Dr. Sam Shepard, convicted of murdering his wife. A retrial found him not guilty. In the late 1970s, Florida gave cameras a shot. The trial of serial killer Ted Bundy was televised nationally. In 1981, a big ruling came in another Florida case. Two Miami Beach police officers convicted of burglary challenged cameras at their trial, but they lost in a Supreme Court ruling with national implications. It said cameras in court do not violate the constitutional rights of the accused. A decade later...
Is this another version of your God's honest truth, what you decide to tell people or not tell people?
Court TV was launched, with recognition that live courtroom drama could grab and hold a cable audience's attention. Some of law's most remarkable moments in court have played out before a global audience. The 1991 trial of Pamela Smart, a school teacher convicted of helping her teen lover murder her husband.
No, I made a mistake.
You made a lot of mistakes so far in this case.
I sure have. Yes, I have.
Was killing your husband one of those mistakes?
No, it wasn't.
Please stand.
The 1991 rape case against William Kennedy Smith, nephew of President Kennedy, he was found not guilty. The 1992 trial of gay cannibal serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, later murdered in prison. Lorena Bobbitt, who cut off her husband's penis and was deemed temporarily insane. Actor Robert Blake found not guilty of murdering his wife. And young mother Casey Anthony not guilty in her daughter's murder. By 2006, all 50 states permitted some form of camera coverage in their courts.
You will serve 10 days for contempt of court.
Producing drama and insight.
This is an emergency created by the state.
I would.
Here, a judge was charged with crimes and removed from the bench after challenging a public defender to a fistfight.
You know what? I'm the public defender. I have a right to be here, and I have a right to stand and represent
sit
my
down.
clients.
If you want to fight, let's go out back and I'll just beat your ass.
This judge recognized a defendant from their middle school days.
Did you go to Nautilus for middle school?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
All the while, in federal court, cameras have been banned except for pilot programs and limited circumstances. In 2020, the COVID-19 shutdowns helped push the envelope. With the normal in-person audience not allowed to observe Supreme Court proceedings, the court broadcast live audio of its oral arguments for the first time in its 230-year history.
We'll hear argument this morning in case 1946, the United States Patent and Trademark Office versus Booking.com.
The case was about whether Booking.com can trademark its name. The answer was yes. As for the Supreme Court justices, some have said the decision of whether to allow cameras at some point should be left up to them, and their views have been divided over the years. Most recently, Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett have pledged to keep an open mind.
So what is your opinion on having cameras in the Supreme Court?
I come to it with an open mind.
I will have an open mind on it.
I would certainly keep an open mind about allowing cameras in the Supreme Court.
Justices Sotomayor and Kagan have expressed positive views.
I have had positive experiences with cameras when I have been asked to join experiments of using cameras in the courtroom.
Actually, I've said before that I do think it would be a good idea, and in this I differ from some of my colleagues.
Chief Justice Roberts sounded hesitant when asked 16 years ago.
There's a concern about the impact of television on the functioning of the institution, and we're going to be very careful before we do anything that we think might have an adverse impact on that.
Justices Thomas and Kennedy joined Souter as clear no's when asked.
It will change our proceedings, and I don't think for the better.
We feel very strongly that it would affect the dynamics of the argument.
One of the most interesting viewpoints came from Justice Scalia.
I was initially in favor of televising, but the longer I've been there, the less good an idea I think it is.
Good morning, Judge Jackson.
At confirmation hearings this past week for nominee Ketanji Jackson.
Well, Senator, I would want to discuss with the other justices their views and understand all of the various potential issues related to cameras in the courtroom before I took a position on it.
The latest congressional bill to bring cameras to federal court was introduced about a year ago by Grassley and co-sponsors, both Republican and Democrat, but there's been little action on it since.
I think the more understanding you get of how our political process works or how the non-political process of the judiciary works, the stronger our democracy is.
After the Lindbergh trial, Charles Lindbergh was said to be so traumatized by the public attention, he secretly took his family to England under assumed names, where they remained for several years, shunning the spotlight and the harsh light of the cameras they'd had to face in court. The congressional proposals would allow the presiding judge in all federal courts the discretion to allow cameras while protecting the identities of witnesses and jurors when necessary.